All right, let's talk some ASU basketball now. Bobby Hurley got maybe the biggest win of his tenure last Tuesday against number 13 Texas Tech. It was quite a scene out there. There was a court storm, but not a whole lot of people there. It was a 9 p.m. tip. I saw that, and I was praying for you guys who had to go out there that late. But he gave ASU with that win a plausible pathway to get into the bubble conversation. Needed to win most of its remaining games, and then lost at Baylor, not a good team, despite being up 10, and they just weren't playing well. So a tale of two games there.
Yeah, I think ASU played reasonably well against Baylor for most of the game, but then had a 10-point lead, as you said. And Baylor's better than its record. Like the Big 12 is probably the best conference in college basketball, and Baylor's a 4-win team in the Big 12 now, but it's a little bit deceiving because I think their NCAA net ranking is like in the top 50 maybe. They're not good enough to where they're going to be an NCAA tournament team or even on the bubble given their conference record, I would say at this point. But so that, I think ASU was like a very slight underdog going into that game. But what ASU had accomplished was moved up several spots to, I think, 68th in the NCAA net by being Texas A&M. The reason it was the biggest win for Hurley is because he's in his final season of his contract. And his team is playing for his future at ASU, whether or not that's going to happen. And they have big games that are up and coming on their schedule. They're going to play against Iowa State coming up and Kansas. They're hosting Kansas next week. But they needed some additional wins before then to really give themselves some momentum and some energy in terms of the way the bracketology views them right now. They're not even in the conversation of more work to do at this point. But had they beaten Baylor, followed by a win over TCU, they played TCU Tuesday. We're recording this on Monday. And then Utah, which is probably the worst Big 12 team at home. Had they won those 3 games before playing Kansas and Iowa State, right, and then beaten Kansas or Iowa State, one of them. Okay, now they would have probably been in the bubble conversation. But they lost and they didn't play well down the stretch. They were 1 of 9 from the field to end the game, and the end game execution was poor. Masamba Diop, he's a freshman, but he took a really bad decision, low percentage shot with less than a minute left. This happened when ASU had 2 timeouts, and Hurley decided not to use one of the timeouts. So there's questions about end game decision, strategy, execution. And the problem for ASU is that has already been a thing. Like they almost gave away the Texas Tech game after being up big, like 11 points and 3 minutes left. In their prior game, they lost after being up like 15 or 16 points at UCF, which is a bubble team, on the road, a game that they absolutely should have won. And they also played poorly down the stretch in losses against West Virginia, Colorado, and Oregon State. Now, if ASU had won several of those games, a few of those games, we're now talking about a team that's already on the bubble. And that's the difference between literally not just having a chance to make the tournament and being an extraordinarily unlikely candidate at this point, and also the difference between Bobby or Hurley having a much more realistic opportunity to return to ASU next season versus the current situation.
Well, to that point, Graham Rossini went on Arizona Sports last week and said they're still continuing to evaluate given everything that's happened. I mean, what do you think will be the ultimate outcome here?
Yeah, that's what a good AD is always going to say in a situation like this. I don't have any inside knowledge about how far likely that he is in his mind right now to making a coaching change. I do think that it does depend in part on what happens here at the conclusion of the season. But I've never seen in my career a basketball coach at ASU coaching in the last season of his deal. That in and of itself tells you that this is somebody who needs to deliver a result in order to be asked back. And I will give Hurley credit where credit is due. They were picked last in the Big 12. They lost their entire roster, essentially, which they've had a revolving door of players for a few years now. It's been one of the biggest problems that they've had. He's done a very good job of bringing in talent year over year. They haven't necessarily always played to their talent level. So even though they did a very good job, I think, of getting Mo Odom and finding Pick Johnson from an NAIA team and getting Mayusin from overseas, and Masamba Diop's been a revelation, and he's a future NBA player. Okay, really impressive that they were able to put together that type of a team in the final year of a coach who, seems to be like a, lame duck situation, right? But what they have accomplished is still insufficient, in my opinion, barring some extremely strong finish to the season, like needing to beat some ranked teams, needing to put themselves into the NCAA tournament conversation. Before the season, I thought they were going to have to make an NCAA tournament or bust. But, for Hurley to be able to continue at ASU. Masamba Diop's done a very good job. He's developed. If he expresses a desire to return to ASU to play for Hurley, and maybe Noah Mayusin does as well, and some of these other players that have remaining eligibility, and they finish with a strong conclusion here over the next couple of weeks, it's not out of the question that Graham Rossini and ASU may consider continuing with Hurley. I just view it as still unlikely in the aggregate that they're going to be in that particular situation here in 2 to 3 weeks.
Well, like you said, 2 games against unranked teams, TCU and Utah, and then 2 ranked games to cap off the season, Kansas. That game's on my birthday, by the way. And then last game of the season at Iowa State. Iowa State moved up to number 4, and Kansas State is 14 right now. So
they better win 3 of those games, Gabby. And then even with that, they're probably going to have to win a game or 2, at least perhaps, in the Big 12 tournament to achieve their goal. Mo Odom, very good, addition for ASU, and he wants to go out with an NCAA tournament appearance. And he's had some great performances, and also a lot of shaky moments, and almost like pressing or forced shots and things at times. But I really think he's been a great player and a really good point guard for ASU on the offensive end. Defense, not as much. This isn't as good of a defensive team. I will say they played better defensively in the last week, and it's going to take a continued effort in that respect to have the type of success that's needed for them to be in that conversation.
Alrighty, well, tall task ahead. See if they step up to the plate, which brings me to